This is why we need fathers back in the home ASAP,
I
because
agree.
we are responsible for the maturity of both our sons and our daughters, fully maturing. And this is what I mean by that. I now believe that a person is not fully mature until they can fully blame themselves for every negative occurrence that happens to them. If you get robbed, we now think in society that we just blame the bank robber. Do you know what my father would have done? He would have asked what I did to put myself in that position in the first place. That shit used to confuse the hell out of me when I was young. Now, as a man, I understand what he meant. Prevention is better than cure. Everything that happens to you, you have to find a way to understand your liability in it. And that is how we get a mature society. All right. I
But
am not, I am not going to deal with the dude. If my daughter comes to me at 20 years old and says she's pregnant and he won't pick up the phone and I can't find this dude, I don't just want to find the dude. The first order of business is wondering why she was so stupid as to get too pregnant by a man who wouldn't pick up the phone to take care of his responsibility. That is the type of woman we need to be raising in this society. Prevention is better than cure. We're always trying to find the cure for something we've already done.
I
So I'm trying to
agree.
prevent it from happening. That is where I don't care what the man did. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care what the man did. Men are out here hunting. Don't be prey. That is my ultimate point.
Well, do I
Mike,
If
think
I
they're able to
agree.
lie?
But if
I
we
think
just
we
got
should hear
finished
what
talking
both
about
of
maturity, because I totally agree with what you're saying. Totally agree. But if we're talking about maturity, then what you're saying don't necessarily apply, especially for a female, in the sense that I grew up with both parents in the house. I had my dad in the house. My dad talked to me about, the conversation was just basically wait until you're married. That was his conversation. My daughter, she grew up in a house with her dad. And he's had now his conversations with her sometimes I felt was a little too raw, but looking back, I can appreciate it because he gave it to her 100%. So the idea for him, he was like, no, I don't want to say it any other way. I'm not sugarcoating nothing because she could never say she did not know. I'm giving her scenarios. I'm giving her examples. I'm even telling her what I did to girls. So she could never say she did not know. And even with all of that prevention, all of that information, it took one guy for her to meet, and all of that went out the window because it's different when you're hearing things coming from your parents versus when you actually experience something totally different. And so I'm just
so,
saying sometimes
so
it
this,
works, sometimes
yeah.
it
Well,
doesn't.
no. Well, this is also what we're saying. So that is usually what happens when I make these type of statements. Everyone gives me an anecdote, but what we're talking about in the greater scale of things is that a father's intervention or that type of teaching is the difference between millions of single mothers and just a few.
Yeah,
And
she
let
don't
me
have
listen.
any
And the
children.
only thing I
That's true.
disagree with, the
She
only thing
doesn't
I
have any
disagree with,
children.
listen, the only thing I disagree with, I agree with everything that you're saying, but I disagree that we do not have to, it's just all on the woman. I think that it's important. I'm going to always teach my son to do right by people. It is also important. If I want him to be a leader and a good leader, he has to have values as well. And he needs to understand that he has to lead in a decent manner. So to say that it all belongs to the woman, I get the woman should close her legs, absolutely, but I'm gonna also teach my son the right way that he needs to move in society. Period.
Well, I mean, you're not going to get me to disagree with that. What I'm saying is, I'm also acknowledging that I don't raise everybody's son. I only raise mine. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. But
I
we're
cannot
always
affect.
responsible for
Yeah,
our
I cannot
children.
affect the bad teaching and or lack of teaching of other people's children. Therefore, I will teach mine.
Gotcha.
So I want
Yeah.
I
Right.
want to say
So
this right and bring it like all the way back to like one of your first comments, Trigger Mike, right? Because Mistaken's example, I don't think is an anomaly. This goes to the point of like how important community is, because that's where like the aunties, the uncles, the cousins, the neighbors really come in, because let's not be oblivious to the fact that children don't always listen to parents, right? Because there's this perspective where like, oh, like that relationship taints the information to some degree in terms of being received. That's where the community really comes into play. That's where the community really becomes essential, where when now all of a sudden, because I'll say for me, right? Like I I don't have any children. I grew up with both parents, right? But I also had my aunts, my cousins, my uncles, family, friends, all of this stuff were reinforcing the same messaging that I was getting from my parents. So it was no longer just, oh, my parents are outdated. They don't know what they're talking about. Their time was different than mine. I do want kids, Isaiah. Um, but like it was more so like hearing it consistently from all of these different people that wanted the best for me, that were not just my parents, where like it made more sense, right? So back to like your original point, like community is so essential so that you don't have that. It's not just throwing it out the window because there are all of these other people supporting it.
With like-minded like values and such, and that's something too, not to go off, but with community and with family, especially when things happen, like just as I get older and things happen with family members that really is just a result of age or just really sad circumstances, it's like, what would we do if, well, in one of the situations, it's like, what do you do? Because if you don't have family members that can step up and that have the resources to help, and whether that's time or financial resources, it's like, what would you do? And that's what family's for, in whatever, capacity, and just community in general. And it just needs to be stressed even more so. But, and one other thing is, I will always encourage people, whether, and I don't have kids either, but whether I have boys or girls or whatever, I'm going to encourage them to take ownership and to have agency always over their own decisions and what happens. And of course, some things happen. People can be manipulative, but still, I'm going to question them and be like, okay, what choices, what were you thinking? What was going on with you? Because that's where your power lies as an individual, is the decisions you make. So that's all I wanted to add.
I think that the more and more these videos start coming out, people are talking. I think that the new generation, it will almost be like you're just blind to it at this point. I think that it's easy for us because, we didn't have the technology. Men weren't talking to women about what they were really thinking. Women weren't talking to men about what they were really thinking. So it left a gray area. Like nobody really knew. It wasn't really black or white. Now it's kind of in your face. Like we see the TikToks, we see most people have social media. So if you're still falling for the okie doke after maybe 2 years have gone by and you've seen it, it's kind of like, it's you.